The evening air was brisk as the light rain fell upon the hard heads of tired workers. August Spies, an anarchist, overlooked the large crowd of calm strikers from an open wagon, and with a prominent voice declared that this rally was not meant to incite violence.
There seems to prevail the opinion in some quarters that this meeting has been called for the purpose of inaugurating a riot. However, let me tell you at the beginning that this meeting has not been called for any such purpose.
Orange flames engulfed the police line as officers tried to forcefully disperse the peaceful strikers. The once crisp silence from before was interrupted with chaotic screams and explosions. A pipe bomb had been thrown, instantly taking the life of Officer Matthias J. Deegan. Darkness from the thick, black smoke rolled over the crowd like the shadow of a demon, bringing with it confusion and fear. Gunfire began instantaneously. Left to right, bullets were flying, buzzing by the faces of innocent people. Officers shooting officers. 8 policemen and 4 workers were killed. 60 officers severely wounded, most likely by each other. Tuesday, May 4th, 1886, the Haymarket Riot was born. The Haymarket Riot was an organized rally planned by anarchist leaders to protest the brutality of policemen. Brutality of policemen? Psh, our police officers would never intentionally act violent. They were probably just trying to protect American citizens by vigorously breaking up a serene strike and aimlessly pulling the trigger in any direction. All they did was kill and injure innocent people and other officers. They were just trying to protect us from the rebelling immigrants. Those silly immigrants who planned this rally. Immigration increased in the United States as the Industrial Revolution was on the rise during the 20th century. Factories were built, mines were formed, mills were made, and jobs were finally available. Jobs that immigrants needed. These working conditions were inhumane, though. With unhealthy environments, little pay, only the desperate would partake. But immigrants had no choice. They had no property, no money, and they barely spoke English. The perfect sweatshop worker. Businesses were looking for ways to produce more goods and make more money, and manipulating these hopeless people was the perfect strategy. Capitalists made a profit off their work, ranking these workers as the lowest class. They were stripped of their individuality and humanity.
So, immigration, you have people who are, largely identifying with their nationality, but nothing else in a brand new country, and who largely are underemployed. And if they are employed, it's usually in an exploitative nature in a factory or, on a farm or something like that, being paid the economic term of jack nada, right? So very little for what they were being done. So the idea of somebody, getting handed a socialist pamphlet and being told about workers' rights and being told about, these new ideas, I think would be really appealing to a lot of those immigrants, right? Yeah.
An orb of flames illuminated the streets of New York as the enormous sweatshop caught fire. The fire spread higher and higher with each second, leaving firemen helpless in extinguishing it. With ladders too short to reach the uncontrollable blaze, the workers' hope for life vanished. It was March 1911 when a fire broke out in one of New York's 500 sweatshops, the Triangle Shirtwaist Company. Disturbed employers of this capitalist-run factory illegally locked the doors of the workroom, where the raging fire took place. Trapped with no way out, young woman workers anticipated their death. Some fled the flames by jumping out the sky-high building, while others singed slowly. 146 innocent workers were killed by an illegal delinquency. Coming from the foreign countries, Germany and Russia, the minds of these immigrants were filled with ideas of communism, a theory of social organization based on the holding of all property in common. Karl Marx, a political theorist in these countries at the time, believed in communism and preached his ideas of a classless society through the Communist Manifesto. This manuscript summarized his views when it stated,
"The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles."
This theory contradicted the capitalist views of America, the belief that production and distribution are privately or corporately owned. The drastic change in social systems made rebellion of workers and immigrants inevitable, and the union movement began to grow. Though there were many variations, the core component of socialism is the belief that workers have power and protected rights.
In the late 19th century, or even the early 20th century, socialism was new. It was a political philosophy that, even an economic philosophy or an approach to life that was new and different. And Marx and Engels had written about it, almost 40 years prior, 50 years prior, but it had just taken root. There was no such thing as a socialist-dominated country yet. And so, in the United States, just like any new movement, it was popular. It resonated, I think, with a lot of the population who were workers receiving very low wages, whose work was being exploited because there were no unions. Working conditions were deplorable. The average life expectancy of somebody of the working class was significantly lower than of the upper class, which actually it still is today, but back then profoundly more so.
Labor unions, or groups of workers band together to achieve better working conditions, began to become popular in the U.S. Workers were fed up. The biggest union at the time, and still thriving today, was the American Federation of Labor, or the AFL. But this union did not represent all workers. Made up of almost all white, male, skilled laborers, they seemed no better than the corporate bosses. Blacks were kept out of the AFL, and only 1 in 100 women workers were allowed in, even though women made up 1/5 of the entire workforce in 1910. Desperate workers needed a more radical union, one that was also fed up with the law and the military constantly taking the side of the rich, one that believed in protecting workers' rights. Industrial Workers of the World, or IWW, was that union. The IWW believed that workers could take power in a country, not by forcefully taking control of the government, but by bringing the economic system to a stop. This belief was inspired by anarcho-syndicalism, a new idea developing in foreign countries. Basically, the goal of this union was to organize all workers into one big unit, undivided by skills, race, or sex. Over the next few years of its birth, the IWW and other labor unions became more and more of a threat to capitalists.
And so, the labor union, the idea is a group of workers, generally at that time, under the same roof, that is, as part of the same company, and then later as part of the same field, right? So if you're all, manufacturers and we all work for, Haley's manufacturing company, it's like, okay, that's great. And then, hey, let's get together and let's organize. And that's the operative verb for labor is let's organize. Together we are strong. If you take a bundle of sticks, you try to break it, you can't, but if you take one, you can break it, right? All those kind of analogies, and symbolism was used at that time. And so
Another labor union that was formed during this time was the American Railway Union. Eugene Debs decided to form this union of skilled and non-skilled railway workers in response to unfair pay cuts. Many companies, such as the Pullman Company, reduced wages because there was a scarcity of workers. However, the workers could not stand for this. Not only were they being paid less, they were also being treated unfairly by the foremen. And so began the Pullman strike. The American Railway Union shut down railway traffic in 27 states west of Chicago to protest the unfair treatment of capitalist railway owners. President Cleveland sent federal troops to end the peaceful strike, but that only made matters worse. Strikers began setting off fireworks, tipping over railway cars, and setting fires to buildings. Eventually, the mayhem came to an end, resulting in the defeat of the strikers. Although the American Railway Union was defeated in its attempts to make the treatment of the railway workers fairer, Eugene Debs gave all of the workers of America an idea that workers have power when united together. With this idea in the imagination of the people, socialism became a bigger part of the United States. It also became more prominent in the United States when Eugene Debs, a member of the newly formed Socialist Party of America, ran for president in 1912 and won 6% of the popular vote. This brought socialism to a national level, to the attention of Americans everywhere, and instilled an idea that has lasted throughout the generations.